For the best medical and paramedical lectures, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to stay connected with us.
In this video, we will learn about Meniere's disease. Starting with the introduction of the Meniere's disease. Meniere's disease is also known as idiopathic endolymphatic hydrops, which is a disorder of the inner ear where the endolymphatic system is distended with the endolymph. It is characterized by spontaneous episodic attacks of vertigo, sensorineural hearing loss, which usually fluctuates, tinnitus, and often a sensation of oral fullness. It is a common cause of the syndrome of a spontaneous vertigo. Despite this well-known symptom complex, it remains a controversial and often difficult condition to diagnose and treat. Now comes to the definition of the Meniere's disease. Meniere's disease is defined as a disorder of the inner ear in which the endolymphatic system or endolymphatic sac is distended. It is also known as endolymphatic hydrops. Endolymphatic hydrops is known as, we can say that, dilation of the endolymphatic space which is developed by either increased pressure in the system or rupture of the inner membrane occurs, which produce symptoms of Meniere's disease. In other words, Meniere's disease is also defined as an abnormality in inner ear fluid balance which is caused by the malabsorption in the endolymphatic sac or endolymphatic system and the blockage in the endolymphatic duct. Comes to the before starting about the disease condition, let's have a look on the anatomy of the endolymphatic system. As we all know, as we all have studied, that endolymphatic system is present in the inner ear. The inner ear consists of two parts, the bony labyrinth and the membranous labyrinth. The membranous labyrinth is filled with a clear fluid which is also known as endolymph, while the space between membranous and bony labyrinths is filled with the perilymph. Membranous labyrinth consists of the cochlear duct, the utricles, the saccule, and the three semicircular ducts, and the endolymphatic ducts and sac. There are two fluids which are present in the inner ear, that is perilymph and the endolymph. The perilymph, it resembles extracellular fluid. It is rich in sodium ions. It fills space between the bony and the membranous labyrinth. It also communicates with the CSF through aqueduct of cochlea, which opens into scala tympani near the round window. The second fluid is endolymph. It fills the entire membranous labyrinth. It resembles ICF. It is rich in potassium ions and it is secreted by the secretory cells of stria vascularis of cochlea and by the dark cells. Now comes to the incidences of the Meniere's disease. When we see the Meniere's disease affects 10 to 12 of 1000 people in the United States, it is also estimated that there are 61,50,000 cases in the United States, with approximately 45,500 new cases diagnosed annually. More than 5 lakh people are affected by Meniere's disease in India every year. The wide variation exists from 70 up to 1 lakh in the Japanese population to 513 up to out of 1 lakh in the southern Finland. When we see about the male to female ratio, the male to female ratio is 2:3 ratio. The most common age of presentation is 4th and 5th decade. That is, the onset is generally seen when the adults reach their 40s, with symptoms usually begin between the ages of 20th and 60 years. In the familial cases, migraine is found to be more strongly associated. There is a gene which is HLA-BA-DR3 and CW7 which have been associated. So, etiology in these persons may be autoimmune. Now comes to the risk factors of the Meniere's disease. The risk factor of the Meniere's disease include smoking, alcohol use, fatigue, respiratory infection, stress, use of certain medications which includes aspirin. Genetics may also play a role. When it comes to the etiology of the Meniere's disease, though exact cause of the Meniere's disease is still unknown, that's why Meniere's disease is idiopathic. The possible causes may include defective absorption by endolymphatic sac, allergies, sodium and water retention, hypothyroidism, autoimmune and viral etiologies, mumps, syphilis, head trauma, previous infection. In case of hormonal, pregnant females are more prone. When it comes to the pathophysiology of the Meniere's disease, the pathophysiology of Meniere's disease start with the obstruction of the endolymphatic duct or the endolymphatic sac. When there is any kind of obstruction in the endolymphatic duct, there will be the alteration in the production and absorption of the endolymph. If there will be the alteration in the production and absorption of the endolymph, it will lead to distension of endolymphatic sac. Then if there will be distension of, if the endolymphatic sac will be distended, there will be the increased pressure and there will be the chances for the rupturing of the inner membranes in the inner ear, and the patient will show the signs and symptoms of vertigo, tinnitus and hearing loss, which are the main clinical features of Meniere's disease. Now comes to the clinical manifestation or the clinical features of the Meniere's disease. Firstly, the Meniere's disease is characterized by a triad of symptoms such as episodic vertigo, tinnitus. Tinnitus is also known as unwanted noises in the head or ear, and fluctuating sensorineural hearing loss. Okay, the patient may include also the symptoms of a feeling of pressure or fullness in the inner ear, and which is often accompanied by nausea and vomiting. And these all symptoms range in the severity from a minor nuisance to extreme disability, which especially if the attacks of vertigo are severe. Mainly at the onset of the diseases, usually one or two of the symptoms are manifested. The other symptoms may also include patient might have the complaints of headache, pain or discomfort in the abdomen due to nausea and vomiting, uncontrollable eye movements. Meniere's disease is also characterized by the occurrence of the episodic vertigo, which is associated with the oral pressure but no cochlear symptoms. Patient may experience either cochlear or vestibular disease symptoms. However, eventually all of these symptoms will be developed. There is a diagram of the normal membranous labyrinth and the dilated membranous labyrinth. The dilated membranous labyrinth is also known as the hydrops. यहाँ पे hydrops का मतलब ही होता है कि dilation of the endolymphatic duct or the endolymphatic sac, which you can see easily in the diagram. Comes to the classification of the Meniere's disease, according to guidelines were given by AAO-HNS, there Meniere's disease is of three types: definite Meniere's disease, probable Meniere's disease and the possible Meniere's disease. In the definite Meniere's disease, there will be the more than 2 spontaneous attacks of vertigo, each lasting more than or equals to 20 minutes, hearing loss documented by PTA on at least one occasion. Tinnitus or oral fullness will be present on the affected side of the ear. In case of probable Meniere's, there will be more than 2 spontaneous attacks of vertigo with unilateral hearing loss, with tinnitus, with oral fullness. All symptoms will be present at the same time. Comes to the third type, that is possible Meniere's. There will be more than 2 attacks of spontaneous attacks of vertigo without any auditory impairment. Comes to the diagnostic evaluation. Diagnostic evaluation mainly started with the history collection of the patient. A careful history is taken to determine the frequency, duration, severity and characteristic of vertigo attacks, as vertigo may last from few minutes to hours, which is possibly accompanied by nausea and vomiting. Therefore careful history should be taken, and the patient might have the feeling of hearing loss, which fluctuate with tinnitus and oral pressure waxing and waning with changes in the hearing. Now the second one is physical examination. Mainly physical examination findings are usually normal with the exception of those of cranial nerve 8th one, and the patient are sometimes diaphoretic and pale. Vital signs may show elevated blood pressure, pulse and the respiration rate. The Weber's, we can also conduct the Weber's and the Rinne's test. The Weber's test is conducted by using the tuning fork, which may lateralize to the ear opposite to the hearing loss, the one affected with the Meniere's disease. Now, in case of Rene's test, it is positive. Absolute bone conduction is reduced in the affected ear. Weber test, if Weber test comes normal, it means equal hearing will be present on the both sides of the same type. If it is abnormal, it means the tone will be louder on one side. If the patient is having conductive loss, the tone will be louder on the affected side. If the patient is having sensorineural hearing loss, here SNHL means sensorineural hearing loss, then the tone louder on the contralateral side. In case of Rene's test, if the Rene's test is positive, the patient may have the bilateral sensorineural hearing loss. If the Rene's test is negative, the sound will be louder on the mastoid process. The next diagnostic evaluation is transtympanic electrocochleography. Transtympanic electrocochleography, that is ECOG, it is specifically detects distortion of the neural membranes of the inner ear. Next is electronystagmography, that is ENG. It is a test of the inner ear function. It mainly सेमी सर्कुलर कैनाल्स के फंक्शन को हम चेक करने के लिए ENG कंडक्ट करते हैं. इलेक्ट्रोकॉक्लियोग्राफी, it is a most sensitive and specific test for Meniere's disease when tone burst and click stimuli are used, and when the responses are recorded transtympanically at the promontory. जो भी शीट पे रिकॉर्ड्स किए जाते हैं पेशेंट की जो भी स्टिमुलाई और पेशेंट की जो भी ईयर की जो टोन वगैरह है, जो भी हम रिकॉर्ड करते हैं उसको हम बोलते हैं प्रोमोन्ट्री. ओके. ट्रांसटिम्पैनिकली मतलब ट्रांसटिम्पैनिकली हम इन सब चीज़ों को रिकॉर्ड करते हैं. गिविंग 4 ग्राम ओरल NaCl फॉर 3 days प्रायर टू ECOG विच इंक्रीज द सेंसिटिविटी ऑफ द टेस्ट. मतलब जैसे अगर आज पेशेंट का इलेक्ट्रोकॉक्लियोग्राफी होना है तो होने से 3 दिन पहले पेशेंट को 4 ग्राम ओरल NaCl दिया जाता है, जिसकी वजह से जो टेस्ट की सेंसिटिविटी है वो जो इंक्रीज हो जाती है. There are the techniques which are used in the physical examination, such as otoscopy, nystagmus, tuning fork test. By the otoscopy, we can check any abnormality in the tympanic membrane. Nystagmus, it is seen only during acute attacks. Quick component is towards unaffected ear. During physical examination, we can observe these things. Tuning fork test, it indicates sensorineural hearing loss, as we have studied earlier. Okay, now comes to the management. The goals of the management of the patient with Meniere's disease is to control vertigo, preserve hearing, stabilize tinnitus. So firstly, non-pharmacological management. There are the kinds of management are non-pharmacological management, pharmacological management, surgical management and nursing management. So firstly, we will discuss about the non-pharmacological management. In the non-pharmacological, firstly, as a nurse, we must know that most patients with the Meniere's disease can be successfully treated with the diet and medication. Many patients can control their symptoms by adhering to a low sodium diet, that is 1000 to 1500 mg per day or less than it. The nurse should instruct the patient to limit foods high in salt and sugar and be aware of foods with hidden salts and sugar. The patient should eat meals and snacks at regular intervals to stay hydrated. Missing meals or snacks may alter the fluid level in the inner ear. Patient should eat fresh fruits, vegetables and whole grains. Patient should limit the amount of frozen and processed food with high sodium content. Patient should drink plenty of fluids daily. Water, milk or low sugar fruit juices are recommended. Limit the intake of coffee, tea and soft drinks. Avoid caffeine because of its diuretic effect. Patient must limit the alcohol intake, as alcohol may change the volume and concentration of the inner ear fluid and it may worsen the symptoms. Patient should avoid monosodium glutamate, which may increase the symptoms. Patient should pay attention to the intake of foods which contain sodium such as bananas, tomatoes, oranges. If patient is taking diuretic may cause potassium loss. That's why patient must pay attention to the intake of food containing that sodium. Patient should avoid aspirin and aspirin contained medications, as aspirin may increase tinnitus and dizziness. Now comes to the pharmacological management, which is जिसका aim है to decrease production or accumulation of the endolymph. The drug therapy for Meniere's disease include acute vestibular symptom suppression drugs that aim to influence endolymphatic eye drops, which include diuretics and beta histine, suppression of the immunological reaction with steroids and methotrexate, the restriction of vestibular end organ by intratympanic injection of aminoglycosides. First था acute vertigo suppressions. Acute vertigo suppression में हम वो सारे पेशेंट को ड्रग देते हैं, पेशेंट को प्रिस्क्राइब किए जाते हैं वो ड्रग, जैसे कि एसिटाइल कोलिन है, हिस्टामिन है, GABA neurotransmitter actions at the level of the primary to secondary vestibular neurons and the vestibular nuclei, antiemetics, वो सारे ड्रग्स इसमें पेशेंट को प्रेस्क्राइब किए जाते हैं जो कि पेशेंट के वर्टिगो को कंट्रोल करते हैं. नाम से समझ आ रहा है एक्यूट वर्टिगो सप्रेशन, पेशेंट के वर्टिगो अटैक्स को सप्रेस करते हैं. द सेकेंड वन इज एंटीकोलिनर्जिक्स. एंटीकोलिनर्जिक्स में इसमें मेनली ड्रग है हायोसिन, विच वॉज वन ऑफ द फर्स्ट टू बी यूज फॉर द ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ वर्टिगो एंड स्टिल इट रिमेन्स द मोस्ट इफेक्टिव ड्रग फॉर द ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ मोशन सिकनेस. एंड द थर्ड वन इज एंटीहिस्टामिन. एंटीहिस्टामिन क्या करते हैं? It is having antimuscarinic effects that act centrally in the dopamine receptor in the area posterior of the brainstem that are effective in controlling nausea and vomiting. The next is piperazines, including cyclizine, a histamine receptor. It also helpful in controlling the gastrointestinal symptoms such as vomiting or motion sickness. The calcium channel antagonist, it also it is effective in the prevention of the motion sickness, while when 15 mg cinarizine has no effects of mental and vigilance performance. Then the next one is intratympanic injection of AG. इसमें जेंटामाइसिन पेशेंट को इंट्राटिम्पैनिकली इंजेक्ट किया जाता है, जिन पेशेंट में मेडिकल थेरेपी फेल हो जाती है उन पेशेंट को ये दिया जाता है. ओके, नाउ कम्स टू द सर्जिकल मैनेजमेंट. सर्जिकल मैनेजमेंट इंक्लूड्स एंडोलिम्फेटिक सैक सर्जरी or the endolymphatic sac depression, selective vestibular neurectomy, surgical labyrinthectomy. Okay, the endolymphatic sac depression, इसमें क्या करते हैं कि a shunt or the drain is inserted in the endolymphatic sac through the post-auricular incision. This procedure is favored by many otolaryngologists as a first-line surgical approach to treat the vertigo of the Meniere's disease because it is relatively simple and safe and can be performed on an outpatient basis. The next one is selective vestibular neurectomy. It helps to stop vertigo attacks, but hearing loss and facial paralysis may occur as a potential complication. It can be performed in a manner that can conserve hearing, which mainly depend on the degree of hearing loss. Okay, this procedure may require a brief hospital stay. The third one is surgical labyrinthectomy. It helps to stop vertigo attacks at the expense of losing any remaining hearing on that side. Now comes to the nursing management. Firstly, we have to assess the severity and frequency of attacks. Any associated ear symptoms such as hearing loss, tinnitus or vertigo. Help the patient to prevent from oral fullness, so patient has time to prepare for an attack. Encourage patient to lie down during attack in safe places. Put side rails in the bed if the patient is in bed. Place pillow to restrict the movement. Administer or teach anti-vertiginous medications and sedation medications as prescribed. Avoid noises and glary bright light which may initiate the vertigo attack. Advise the patient to avoid food that cause allergy. Assist with the ambulation when indicated. Provide comfort measures and avoid stress producing activities. If the patient has undergone any of the surgical management or the surgery, the post operative nursing instructions include antibiotic or the other medications are to be taken as prescribed. Nose blowing is to be avoided for the few weeks, such as for the 4 to 6 weeks. Sneezing and coughing should be done with the mouth open for a few weeks after surgery. Heavy lifting, straining, and bending are to be avoided for a few weeks after surgery. Minor discomfort is expected, can relieve by analgesic. Excessive pain should be reported to the surgeon. Some slightly bloody or serocongenous drainage from the ear is normal after surgery. These all things should be instructed to the patient. Excessive or purulent drainage should be reported to the surgeon. The cotton ball in the ear can be changed as needed, but not to touch or remove any packing from the external auditory canal to prevent from infection. Post-auricular suture line should be cleaned and antibiotic ointment should be applied twice daily. The surgeon should consult for regular air travel. Getting water in the operated ear must be avoided for 2 weeks after surgery. The dressing should be open on the third day after the surgery. Suture must be removed after the 10 days of surgery. The head of the patient should be elevated up to 30 degrees for at least 3 days after surgery. Chewing, sneezing, and coughing. Prevent water in ear for at least 6 weeks. Never put oil in ear. Hearing may be impaired for few months. RT edema, blood fluid may be present. Patient and the nurse must observe the complications such as facial nerve palsy, the brain abscess, and the meningitis. Avoid flying in air for 2 months. BIPP dressing, that is bismuth ickthymol paraffin paste, should be done while doing mastoid surgery. The complications may include inability to walk or function due to uncontrollable vertigo, hearing loss on the affected side, possible of injury due to imbalance. The prognosis include the outcome varies. Meniere's disease can often be controlled with the treatment. The condition may get better on its own sometimes when patient is having some kind of dietary restrictions, as we have studied earlier. If the patient is taking proper diet or the low diet of the sodium and the sugar, the condition may get better on its own. Meniere's disease may be chronic, disabling, causing permanent hearing loss if the proper dietary instruction should not be followed or the disease condition is ignored continuously. The Meniere's may be chronic, disabling, which cause permanent hearing loss. So thank you for listening.
Do like, leave a comment, and share with your friends.